Springfield's Talk 1041. Welcome, everybody, to the show. Oh, Fauci. New information release that he was really more instrumental in trying to cover up for the communist Chinese in the lab leak. Talking about COVID. A lot of people are like, why now? I mean, the timing of this does not seem very good, right? I mean, this doesn't seem great. Why would the Biden administration? Last week, there was the revelation that you had a few more of these government agencies within the Biden administration acknowledging that, well, maybe this lab leak thing actually does have some merit. Maybe the people who were curious about a potential lab leak weren't actually racist after all. They weren't tinfoil hat-wearing individuals after all. They weren't conspiracy theorists after all. Maybe there was something legit. Maybe they weren't anti-science after all. Maybe they were right. And you've got Biden in the midst of his announcement, which is expected to come, who knows when with Biden, that he's going to run for re-election. And it's just why now? Well, I tell you the reason why now. Because Republicans have control of Congress, which means they have control of committees, which means they have certain powers to subpoena information, and this is getting ahead of it. This is to get the information out. Of course, they'd prefer it not come out at all for a number of different reasons. But the timing of this is simply about trying to, as best as possible, steer the narrative and also claim, hey, look, we weren't hiding anything. We were the ones that we acknowledged this before Republicans ever began getting any of the documents that they subpoenaed. We weren't hiding anything. We were some of the first people, as soon as we found out, just like with those documents in my garage, the first ones, as soon as we found out, we did what was right, and we released that. That's what all this is about. If Republicans did not win control of Congress, these admissions would never come. If Republicans did not have control of Congress, you would not have different departments within the executive branch making these admissions. You would still have censorship. You would still have accusations of racism, anti-science being thrown around, just like it was with Senator Cotton and his op-ed piece and anyone else that even wanted to point out the fact that there was this lab in Wuhan where they were doing this research. This is an acknowledgement from the Democrats. They know it is inevitable. This information is going to come out. It is an acknowledgement. They know. You notice that Fauci no longer is the greatest guy in the world. I mean, they certainly, Democrats, they aren't out there dogging on him, but it seems as if he's quietly backed away. Just quietly, just gone away, and we're hearing less and less praise of the great Fauci. They know what information is to come. Coming up, a number of different things. You got to give it to some of these Democrats. At least they're being honest. Chuck Schumer has fully acknowledged that he believes, as a government official, that he should be able to tell Fox News what to do. So, to a degree, you must give a little bit of credit to Democrats that they fully are, in certain capacities, acknowledging they have no respect for freedom of the press, no respect for freedom of religion, no respect for freedom of speech. And they are willing to display their authoritarian nature. Now, the context in which there was this, the story, the New York Times had a story, February 16th. So this was a couple of weeks ago. Fox stars privately expressed disbelief about election fraud claims. Comments by Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, and others were released as part of a defamation suit against Fox News by Dominion Voter Systems. And so the allegations here are that Fox News, they all knew they were lying about this. I've got to give you a perspective on this that I hope will make you think a little bit. Well, I know it will for most of you, because most of you are thinking people. Jason Rima with the latest news update. First alert forecast, partly sunny day, windy, high of 73, mostly cloudy, 41 tonight, slight chance of rain tomorrow with a high of 54, rainy and windy on Wednesday, 50 for the high. We have happy hour coming up this Friday. That's a Retro Metro. We'd love for you to join us, 4 to 6. Just come have some cocktails, have some delicious food if you want, or just conversation. Just hang out with us. It's a great, fun get-together. Hopefully some of you that went on The Great Escape with us will come out. Maybe you haven't ever been to a happy hour, and you'll take this opportunity to do so. Incidentally, I want to thank James Clary for filling in on Monday, Kyle Wyatt for filling in on Wednesday, Houston and Katie for helping out in terms of production and a number of other things as well. And all of you who went, it was a great time, was it not? It's good to be back.
It was.
It's always great to be back.
Now, did you have to go through additional TSA?
No, I did not. I got.
Boy, I sure did.
Who handed the guy the paperwork? Was it you or Ryan?
It was me.
See, I gave it to Morgan. I was like, here, just you hand it to him, maybe because you're a girl. They'll wave us through. And so what did they do? I know it was just random.
I mean, they just asked me a bunch of questions about my job. And
did they tase you?
No. Put me in a little room and made me undress? No. No, they just went through my luggage and all that. So...
We've been flying for several years into Cancun, and the airport over the years, the first time we went, it was not at all like it is today. And I must say that the level of friendliness and the efficiency of the Cancun airport far exceeds St. Louis.
Oh, yes.
I mean, just without question. Even the friendliness component to it.
Yep, I agree.
The cleanliness component to it. I mean, it is the cleanest airport. They just the friendliest people, whether you're talking about security. Now, we went through Frontier Airlines, so I can't speak for the other airlines, but the folks that would check you in, at least in the experience I had in the Cancun, on the Cancun side. I mean, St. Louis, we get there, and there are the self-checkout kiosks, which did not work because evidently someone punched the screens in. And so the line was backed up forever and a day, and the people who were running the ticket counter were not by any stretch the friendliest people. TSA, not by any stretch. There was one person in particular. I mean, the woman was almost as if she wanted you to know she hated her job and you. Then you get to Cancun, and I mean, they're just as friendly as can be. Everything works. And I thought to myself, we keep talking about being a third world country and how, particularly in blue areas of the country, how far things have gone downhill. And I mean, we used to think, wow, this is such a beacon of what things can be, particularly compared to third world countries. Yet here you look at an airport like in St. Louis, and again, the people working there also, which I'm not saying that all of them were bad, but just in this experience. And other experiences I've had in American airports versus foreign airports, and then down in Cancun, and it's just like night and day the difference. But everything's flipped around. You look at an airport like Cancun and you think, man, now this is the way it can be. That was my feeling about it. Was it yours?
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree. I just can't believe I had to go through that additional TSA.
I was in several years ago. The airport, I just remember the stark difference between security in Munich, Germany, versus Chicago. And this is not an exaggeration. It was easier to understand the people in security whose English was their second language in Germany than it was in Chicago. Aside from the fact that they were much friendly, they spoke better English. Just little observations. Springfield's Talk 1041, the American Transmissions Talk and Text Line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. Doobie Brothers coming to the Great Southern Bank Arena Thursday, June 15th. You can register now when you text the word brothers to 447 KSGF. You'll get a thing telling you that you're registered if you did it correctly. I think you need to put 417. May depend on your carrier, your provider. Maybe you just have to just do it. 417-447 KSGF for your chance to win a pair of tickets to the show. That is the Doobie Brothers Great Southern Bank Arena on June 15th. Let me click off there that I said that. Very good. Okay, I want to play some audio. This is Chuck Schumer, and it's just there are a number of aspects of this that deserve attention. And right out of the gate, the fact that you have Chuck Schumer on CNN talking about media outlets, specifically Fox News, and what government should do to punish them or hold them accountable for spreading misinformation. Now, this is a network that was largely responsible for disinformation regarding Russian hoax. This is the outlet that still to this day puts on some of the same so-called experts who claim that the Hunter laptop story was Russian disinformation. This is the same network who claimed that it was ludicrous that anyone would suggest that the coronavirus came from a lab. CNN is, if not in first place, tied for first place when it comes to spreading disinformation. So the just hilarity of this network, talking about Fox News spreading disinformation, is just priceless. Now, first, let me tell you the context. This is because we're going to talk about the context of this coming up, and that is that a New York Times report, and there's a defamation lawsuit against Fox News from the Dominion, or no, what's the, there's a lawsuit going on, and it's the Dominion voting systems. It is Dominion. Claim because Fox News allowed information that was not true, they claim, regarding the Dominion voting system and so forth. And part of it, part of what's been released, are text messages between some of the hosts and so forth, talking about Sidney Powell and others who are out there saying things that they thought were crazy. And so this is proof that Fox News knew that these things were lies, but they were allowing these things to be said anyhow, and they were covering the claims by some of these individuals. So this is Chuck Schumer and some nobody host on CNN discussing this.
Fox needs to reckon with the lies that it spread, and it may literally have to pay for the lies that it spread. But is it the role of government officials to demand that media organizations say things or tell media organizations what to put on their airwaves?
Well, it's hardly the first time that people have said Channel 4 should have done this, the New York Times should have done that. That's not unusual. But what has happened here is, and John, very unusual. This is not simply telling them what to do. This is telling them, showing them, that they have hurt our democracy probably in a way that no other actor, maybe with the exception of Donald Trump, who used them, has done. And so when it's that vital, I think we not only have a right to tell Rupert Murdoch and Fox what to do, but an obligation. And I hope people from one end of the country to the other will call up Fox and say, do what Leader Hakeem Jeffries and I asked for, which is stop the lies, say they were wrong, and report the news. You may have a different way of reporting the news than someone else, fine, but lying is not part of that different way and cannot be.
It's just so perfect that he mentions Hakeem Jeffries, because Hakeem Jeffries is on record as being one of the most adamant election deniers that exist. There's not been, in my lifetime, a Republican president, I don't believe, that has won an election that he did not claim that he claimed was illegitimate, whether it's from rigged voting machines or whatever it may be. And, of course, he refused to acknowledge Trump as president. This is the authoritarian world that we live in. And in Orwellian fashion, here you have Chuck Schumer declaring that our, quote, democracy, which we live in a republic, tremendous difference, but nonetheless, we essentially have to crush democracy in order to save it. In order to preserve democracy, we must get rid of the First Amendment. In order to preserve our freedoms, we have to have government come in and punish people in the media when it presents information that powerful people disagree with. This is the world, and to some degree, again, at least Democrats are becoming honest. Now, of course, the question for some of you that are listening now that have voted Democrat your entire life, or maybe you're new to this game and sometimes you vote Democrat, sometimes you don't, is this you as well? Are you going along for this ride? Or are you going to stay true? You're somebody that, I just give you the benefit of the doubt, that believed that the Democrat Party is the party of freedom, freedom of the press, and so forth. Once you see the mask coming away and unveiling the truth, once you hear the admissions from people like Chuck Schumer, who says, yes, I believe that when it comes to the press, that government should come in and take control, that we must punish people in the press when they report on information that we deem to be untrue. Now, you think about all of the information that they have deemed to be untrue in the past that, of course, turned out to be true. So are you going to go along with that ride? Are you going to join that cult leader and turn your back on everything that you claim that you stand for? That's a decision for individuals to reflect upon, and it's clear that a significant portion of the population has chosen either to reflect upon it and say, yes, I want to be authoritarian as long as my people are in charge, or they have decided not to think at all. They've just chosen their cult leader. Whatever the cult leader says goes. And if that is complete dismissal of the First Amendment, then so be it. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. The American Transmissions Talk and Text line, George texting in, but he isn't calling on or calling out MSNBC or CNN for lying either. Well, of course, that's the benefit of being authoritarian. You get to you just decide. And here's the thing. You don't have to justify it. You don't have to answer to those who say, well, wait a minute here. You claim that your goal here is to prevent disinformation from being provided, yet not only do you support networks who do just that, but you do it yourself, because their answer to that is to also silence you. That's the beauty of being totalitarian. You get to crush anyone who says anything you don't like. And you don't have to worry about, well, gosh, I can't go out and say that you can't do this because this network over here does the same thing. You don't have to worry about that. You just round them up. Silence them. Have those daily calls with social media. Get former administration officials or former employees of the FBI jobs on the social media network sites. Get them jobs on. Get former intelligence individuals who are part of the deep state and who they themselves spread disinformation. Get them jobs on the network. I mean, look at all of them on CNN, MSNBC. That's all you have to do. Because the truth is irrelevant to them. Honesty is irrelevant to them. Ethics, morals are irrelevant to them. Power is the only relevant thing. So it doesn't concern them in the least to come out and claim that this is all about preventing the spread of disinformation when they themselves do it consistently. It makes no difference to them. In fact, some of them get off on the fact that they're doing it because that is a display of their power. That is their way of saying, I'm full of crap. But watch me, I can do it. Because I have power over you. Traffic update, I'm Nick Reed. Aller Building Company, OLLER, for those of you who do not like to do any sort of remodeling of a home. You buy a new home and you're like, I don't want to do that. I want it to be exactly the way that I want it. Well, Aller Building Company, that's what they do for you. You go by their showroom floor, and the home is blank canvas. And literally within a couple of hours, and you could take, of course, a couple of weeks if you want to, but within a couple of hours, if you're a quick decision maker and you're like, bam, over there, bam, there, the fixture's over there, the countertop's over there, that's what I want, so forth, the way you want it, day one. Aller Building Company, OLLER. First alert forecast. Partly sunny, windy today with a high of 73, overnight low of 41. Then we're going to have it a bit cooler for the next several days with a slight chance of rain tomorrow, 54 Wednesday, rainy and windy, 50, 56 with rain on Thursday. Chuck Schumer on CNN discussing the need of the government to take control of, to punish, to hold accountable Fox News for spreading disinformation. Now, not CNN or MSNBC. None of the news outlets that are full-blown propagandists for the Democrat Party, of course, but Fox News. The context in which they are having this totalitarian discussion was a New York Times piece. Fox stars privately expressed disbelief about election fraud claims. Newly disclosed messages and testimony from some of the biggest stars and most senior executives at Fox News revealed that they privately expressed disbelief about President Donald Trump's false claims that the 2020 election was stolen from him, even though the network continued to promote many of those lies on the air. The host Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham, as well as others at the company repeatedly insulted and mocked Trump advisors, including Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani, in text messages with each other in the weeks after the election, according to a legal filing on Thursday by Dominion Voting Systems. Dominion is suing Fox for defamation in a case that poses considerable financial and reputational risk for the country's most watched cable news network. Tucker Carlson wrote to Ingram on November 18, 2020, Sidney Powell is lying, by the way. I caught her. It's insane. Miss Ingram responded, Sidney is a complete nut. No one will work with her. Ditto with Rudy. Mr. Carlson continued, our viewers are good people and they believe it, he added, making it clear that he did not. The messages also show that such doubts extended to the highest level of Fox Corporation, with Rupert Murdoch, its chairman, calling Mr. Trump's voter fraud claim, quote, really crazy stuff. On one occasion, as Mr. Murdoch watched Giuliani and Powell on television, he told Suzanne Scott, chief executive of Fox News Media, terrible stuff, damaging everyone, I fear. Dominion's brief depicts Miss Scott, whom colleagues have described as sharply attuned to the sensibilities of the Fox audience, as being well aware that Trump's claims were baseless, and when another Fox-owned property, the New York Post, published an editorial urging Trump to stop complaining that he had been cheated, Miss Scott distributed it widely among her staff. Mr. Murdoch then thanked her for doing so, the brief said. The filing in state court in Delaware contains the most vivid and detailed picture yet of what went on behind the scenes at Fox News and its corporate parent in the days and the weeks of the 2020 election, when the conservative cable network's coverage took an abrupt turn. And then the story goes on from there. But let's talk about this for a bit. Now, first of all, you can recognize, let's say 2020 election, that there are certain areas of concern without believing every claim that is out there. Do you know what I'm saying? Let's just specifically talk about Sidney Powell. I know a lot of people who recognize that there were clear irregularities and laws broken, laws ignored, admittedly ignored by some of the state's attorney general that are, held by Democrats. It just, there were certain laws. For example, you can't count ballots that, were after this date or that date, and they said, we're going to do it anyway. You can recognize that. I knew a lot of people that recognized that those were problems, but did not agree with a lot that Sidney Powell was saying. So to try and simplify a scenario, now I'm not talking about the lawsuit itself. I'm talking about the presentation here, that this is being used as a smoking gun, that Fox News is horrible because they allowed news coverage of accusations that they knew weren't true. If you are a person who works on a network and you believe that Giuliani is saying things that you don't buy, you think this is crazy, these accusations are crazy, that does not by default mean that you have to believe that there was absolutely nothing wrong with the way that the election was carried out in each and every state. It isn't all or nothing. We have 50 separate states. We have Lord knows how many different drop boxes across this country. Lord knows how many different precincts in this country. Lord knows how many voting machines in this country. When you have states that will have an attorney general just declare, or a secretary of state rather, and each state was different. You had different Democrat leadership in different states. But just saying that the state law regarding what can and cannot count as a vote, I don't care. That's not fair. So we're just going to count these votes anyhow. If you are a person who believes that there should not be a violation of election laws in a state like Wisconsin, for example, that doesn't mean that you automatically then have to agree with everything that Giuliani or Sidney Powell says. Now, what they're trying to do here, and again, I'm not talking about the lawsuit itself, I'm talking about the presentation, is because you have conversations that are going on among some of these hosts within Fox News that say, well, I don't believe what Sidney Powell's saying. I think she's crazy. In fact, Tucker Carlson's talking about, presumably on his own show, catching her in a lie and pointing it out. But what they're trying to do is, because in other areas in which there were clear violations of or ignoring campaign or election laws by some of these officials, or you had, just all sorts of weird things going on potentially, that is a scenario in which Tucker Carlson was promoting something that he knew wasn't true. And that is not, that, one does not exclude the other. If you have 100 accusations that are going on out there, and 2 or 3 of them you look at and you think, well, those don't make sense to me, I don't think that's true at all. But 97 of them, you recognize, there are clearly some issues here that need to be looked at. That's not an inconsistency. That's not presenting any sort of lie. Now, the other aspect of this, and this is an easy trap for people to fall into, because I've heard people who are not left-wing whatsoever, that they're frustrated that, well, why would Fox News allow these allegations to be aired if they knew that they weren't true? And they're frustrated because they feel like it's a loss of credibility to Fox News, and they feel like, that it's, well, I believed Fox News, and now I feel like a fool. Why would they do? I just wish they hadn't have done that. That is a trap they want you to fall into, and I want to explain that. You should not have that perspective, and I'll explain why. That is, here in just moments, we're going to get a traffic update. American Transmissions talk and text line 447-KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. Right, the New York Times has created essentially a propaganda piece against Fox News for all of the Democrat-run media outlets. Fox stars privately expressed disbelief about election fraud claims. Now, the case itself, of course, is going to be this is very, very difficult to prove because it is a First Amendment case and it's Dominion voting systems, and they have taken Fox News to court. And what they're trying, what they would have to prove here is that Fox News deliberately not only knew that they were promoting information that wasn't true, but their goal was to do damage. They had a malice goal towards Dominion voting systems. Okay. Now, that's I'm talking about the coverage of this and how this is being used, and I might add, in some instances successfully, to convince even people who recognize liberal bias in the media that this sort of thing needs to be remedied and that Fox News did something wrong by allowing accusations to be aired that some of the hosts themselves did not believe. Now, I got to be honest with you, when I first heard it presented in that fashion, that I can't believe that they would allow claims to be made that they knew weren't true. My first thought was that's exactly what they should be doing as a news outlet. Otherwise, if you are not doing that, then what are you doing? This is the problem we have in this country, is that we have media outlets that only report news that they believe to be true. Every biased report that is put out there by MSNBC and CNN or these other outlets, it's because that's what they believe to be true. When they hear claims that they think are untrue, like let's use the Wuhan lab as an example. Because the great Fauci claimed that it was not true and there was no truth to it, and because their leaders in the Democrat Party all had that same talking point, they believed it. Which is why collectively they all censored as best as possible any information that was out there regarding the evidence that, in fact, it was a Wuhan lab leak. This was the big to-do at the Washington Times with Senator Cotton in Arkansas referencing that. And you had a bunch of those that worked at the New York Times that protested the fact that he was even allowed to print that because that's not true. And because they did not believe it, they thought that it should not be printed. The deep state played off of this bias, played off of this idea that people in media should only print information that they believe is true. That whole letter with the 51 former intelligence folks claiming that the Hunter laptop story wasn't true, that they used that as a tool within that bias system to prevent that story from getting out there, because that allowed Democrats in the media to believe that it was Russian disinformation. And because they believed that that was the truth, and they believed anyone who said otherwise wasn't telling the truth, it gave them the internal permission to censor it, to not report on it. Remember the exchange that Leslie Stahl had with Trump, and Trump asked her, why on earth aren't you covering this? And she's like, well, it's not true. We shouldn't have to. We have a contradiction going on because now some people on the left want the complete state-run media. And you've got the Chuck Schumers that essentially are acknowledging that in these interviews, saying that government should come in and take care of these media outlets that are spreading information that they don't want to be spread. But you will oftentimes get people that are, I don't want to say outraged, but they'll hear somebody like Lester Holt or others that talk about, well, there's no reason to present both sides of the story because we're right. And I think even the average American, politics aside, they hear that and they think, well, I don't agree with that. I don't think that people in the media should only report on or cover stories or interview people who agree with them. Well, is that not what Fox News is accused of doing here? Of still covering Sidney Powell, still covering Rudy Giuliani, even if they are making allegations that they personally don't believe? Now, again, the legal case itself is separate, and it should, anyhow, of course, in this day and age, with our court systems, and I mean, we saw this play out a couple of weeks with the foreman down in Georgia, that 30-year-old gal who was all giggly over the lawsuits regarding election fraud and so forth. But according to our laws and our protections, the lawsuit itself should not go very far. But that aside, just in this narrative that is being created, that Fox News has done something wrong because they gave airtime to people with whom they did not believe. But then if we have somebody say, well, there are no two sides of the story, there's only our side of the story, so we should not afford airtime to the other side of the story, that somehow upsets us, and it should. But you can't have it both ways, because that's exactly what Fox News is accused of doing. Allowing a perspective that Tucker Carlson did not necessarily agree with. Allowing a perspective from somebody like Sidney Powell specifically that Laura Ingraham thought was a little Looney Tunes. This is how freedom of the press should work. And if we want honesty, then what needs to happen are media outlets that go back to the days in which they allowed people to present their position, and somebody comes on and they're going to say all sorts of weird, crazy things like, all right, but, hey, you're a U.S. senator, or you are somebody that can have an impact on what's going on, so we're going to let people hear your thoughts, but we're also going to let these people over here give their thoughts as well, that way, and then our viewers get to make a decision as to which side they believe, not make those choices for us. And that's what they're accusing Fox News of doing, not making that choice for you, and instead allowing people that were significant to the issue of the day give their position even if they didn't necessarily agree with it. We should not discourage that. We should encourage it. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. American Transmission's talk and text line regarding my position here that we should want media outlets to cover stories even if the hosts, the journalists, whatever their position may be, don't necessarily agree with it or believe in it. And this is what Fox News is being accused of doing when it came to some of the concerns of election. And they're being sued by Dominion Voting Systems, is that even though they knew what Sidney Powell, or even I don't even like to use the term knew, they believed. What Sidney Powell was saying didn't make any sense. They still covered her anyway, and they should not have done that. Now, I think that that's part of the problem we have in this country, is that instead of media outlets saying, here's what they say, here's what's going on, by the way. This is everything that's going on. These are all the people involved. Here are their accusations. These are what they're saying. So there you go. Have at it. Figure out what you want from it. But instead, they're deciding, I'm going to figure out what the truth is, and that's the only information you're going to get. So one of the messages saying, I understand your point, but it seems some of the shows on Fox were promoting it as truth, including Trump. So unbiased reporting kind of goes out the window. I don't think it's wrong, but consistency of unbiased reporting among all news sources is important. Lately, it's a failure. Basically, we have too many opinion shows, not enough neutrality. It's a problem across the board. Well, number one, who decides what's neutral? This is where you get into danger, and this is where the left traps people, because they say, well, the idea of neutrality is fantastic, right? Well, that means we have to have somebody make that decision. Guess who gets to make it? Now, that text, actually, the solution in that messaging is right there, and that is the belief of the person who texted that in, that some of the shows were kind of promoting it. Well, that's okay, and you made that decision. That should be up for that should be a decision that everyone makes for themselves, not the government. News in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed. talking about this New York Times piece last week that is portraying Fox News as doing something wrong because they covered information that some of the hosts did not necessarily agree with or think that was legitimate. This is talking about the 2020 election, specifically Giuliani and Sidney Powell, and the story is based off of court filings in this Dominion voting machine case against Fox News, and in which you had Carlson and Hannity and Ingram and some of these others saying that, or at least in their communication back and forth, appears as if they at least some things that Sidney Powell and Giuliani were saying they didn't think were necessarily true, all the way up to Rupert Murdoch as well, thinking, man, these guys are kind of crazy, some of the stuff that they're saying. But they allowed them to be covered anyhow. Now, I think that's the way news should be. It's interesting how our history can be rewritten, because it is put out there in a fashion that is making people misremember the way that Fox News covered the election. And it is giving people, it's filling the void of those lost memories with this idea that Fox News was out there, the network was pushing the election is stolen, the election is stolen, the election is stolen. Now, I am in a somewhat unique position just because I pay attention to these things every day. And while I can't sit here and pretend that I remember the exact way that it was covered throughout that entire, the duration of that discussion, I do remember the reaction from a lot of people. And they were furious at the way that Fox News was essentially dumping on Trump. The way that Fox News was just trying to essentially cut and run, just get it done, over with. The way that they called Arizona way before it should have been called, incidentally. The way that Fox News presented Giuliani, presented Trump's claims, presented Sidney Powell. I mean, as a stations, and this is part of the reason that I remember it as well, we carry Fox News, the complaints we got at the bias against Trump and against the accusations. So I remember that, I really remember. But if you don't have those memories and you read these stories, it is easy to remember in a false way this idea that somehow Fox News was out there leading the charge that the election was stolen, when in fact it was quite the opposite. So it wasn't a scenario in which overall Sidney Powell or Giuliani or these accusations weren't being challenged. They were, to the point that a lot of Trump supporters were really ticked off about it. This is why One America News and Newsmax all of a sudden gained a huge viewership, because people were abandoning Fox News because of what they felt was a bias against many of those claims. Now, I'm not here to argue that it was more biased this way or more biased that way. But the fact of the matter is, you have people, you have consumers of that product all across the spectrum. I happen to believe that actually is a sign that Fox News was doing it more right than CNN or MSNBC or any of the other networks, where you would be very hard-pressed to find any of their viewers claiming that they were out there promoting the idea that the election was stolen, promoting Trump, promoting Sidney Powell. If you were to gauge or survey the consumers of their product, it's going to be pretty much one-sided. But what I think is interesting is that with Fox News, you get all across the spectrum. You get those who felt that they were biased against Trump when it came to the election coverage. You have those who felt that they were biased towards Trump. And generally, when you have a greater spread in that manner, you're probably doing a more even amount of coverage than any of the networks that are more lopsided in terms of the perception. Anyway, just thoughts. Jason Ryman with the latest news update. First Alert forecast sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Mostly sunny, windy, 73 for a high today. Clouds 41 tonight, tomorrow cloudy. Slight chance of rain, high of 54. Rainy and windy Wednesday with a high of 50. Floors Plus, all of your flooring needs, plus. In fact, this year is the year we're finally going to have a little tackling done, I think, in our bathrooms, and that's where the plus of the Floors Plus come in. What backsplash in our kitchen, I know we're definitely going to have them do. That's something, again, when we bought our home, my goodness, it was almost a decade ago, I guess we're going to get to that point, that my wife just didn't care the style. I mean, the functionality of it's fine, but she didn't care for the style. That is, one of those things that has been on the back burner for too long, and we're going to have taken care of. Plus, maybe our bathrooms, our bathroom and our bedroom, it's one of those just, it's the shower and insert, if you want to call it that. And for a lot of people, the upside, you even see the ads. Well, install it in 2 hours, and you could be taking a shower before you know it. But I like the customized tiling. I like that. I like the craftsmanship of it. I like the uniqueness of it, and that's part of what Floors Plus does. In addition to 0% financing 12 months. Floors Plus, Nix and Springfield. Coming up, FBI shielded identities of undercover assets who may have been inside Capitol on January 6th, according to a whistleblower. Well, isn't this shocking? Now, this is a sort of information, by the way, that networks like ABC, CNN, CBS, all of the major networks would deem to be untrue, so should not get coverage, because that's how they believe media should be run. That's how Chuck Schumer believes media should be run. As long as they decide that it isn't true, they decide that it's not newsworthy, that means you should not even know about it. But you will hear about it here. FBI shielded identities of undercover assets who may have been inside Capitol on January 6, according to a whistleblower. It's the FBI's Washington field office affirmed that there may have been FBI agents, undercover officers, confidential human resources inside the Capitol on January 6th. I wonder if this has anything to do with the cover-up by Nancy Pelosi regarding the security tapes. You think just maybe, this is why the media is so upset that McCarthy is making these tapes available to the public? The FBI's Washington field office requested the Boston field office open investigations into 140 individuals who took buses from Massachusetts to D.C. on January 6, but denied the office's request to see video proving those individuals were inside the Capitol, according to whistleblower George Hill, FBI whistleblower George Hill. This, he said, during a February 10th interview with the House Select Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government. The office claimed they needed to protect the identity of possible undercover agents, according to the Hill. This is how Russia operates. This is how totalitarian governments operate. This is the opposite of transparency. You have government agents that are, in one capacity or another, involved at the scene of an incident that is labeled as a crime or, under this administration, the worst attack on this country, worse than 9/11. But then when you want to investigate, when you want to see whether or not they participated, whether or not these individuals that worked for the government facilitated the event, you say, oh, no, we can't allow you to have that information. We can't make that public. That might put their life in danger. That might do damage to the national security. The Boston office initially opened cases on 2 individuals that definitive evidence showed were in restricted areas of the Capitol, according to the Hill. Because those individuals organized the buses to D.C., the WFO wanted cases open on every individual on the bus. Again, this is how the Soviet Union worked. This is how suppressive regimes operate. Guilt by association. Freedom of assembly is a non-existent characteristic of the nation. You have 2 individuals that you believe did something wrong, so anyone that has any connection can come under full investigation. One of my friends I've been friends with since I was a teenager, much older than me, and during the 70s, the turmoil in Iran into the early 80s with the Shah and so forth, and you had political dissidents that were being executed. And I want to say 2. I know at least one of my friend's brothers was executed. He's born and raised in Iran. And they learned this because one morning they couldn't find the brother, and his bloody clothes were left on the doorstep. The rest of the family fled. He would eventually make his way to the United States. Now, he did nothing wrong. Nothing at all. Went about his business as the turmoil was going on, but he fled because his brother had done something that was against the regime. And so it didn't matter whether he did anything or not because he was connected. Simply because he had a connection to somebody who had done something wrong in the eyes of the government, that meant he was in danger. Once upon a time, that's what separated us from those sorts of regimes, is that you were not guilty by association. But what we've learned is this is exactly how the government has been operating for some time and has been full steam ahead since Biden became president. That if you just rode on a bus that was arranged by somebody that the FBI decided may have done something illegal, you're in that net. Boston's supervisory special agent refused to open cases on everyone who went to D.C. because they were, quote, going to a political rally, which the First Amendment protected activity. And by the way, the FBI people within this Boston division, in every one of these discussions or revelations that come about, they did what was right, and they refused to start targeting Americans simply because they went to some political rally, simply because they had a connection to somebody that the government was targeting. George Hill said people think of the unlawful event that took place later on in the day on January 6th, but up until that time, it was just a rally. People were, either driven to it or flying to it. When another SSA asked to see where they were inside the Capitol, the WFO declined to show the footage unless they knew exact time and place those individuals were inside the Capitol. And what this is getting back to, what the whistleblower testified to, is that he was within the Boston field office and the Washington field office. They were saying, you need to start targeting these people. And they were like, well, were they in the Capitol? We need evidence. We can't just go round up people simply because they attended a political rally. And the Washington FBI field office said, yes, you can. And the Boston field office said, no, we can't. If you give us some evidence, I mean, you want us to round them up in the context of storming the Capitol. We'd like, pictures, videos. And that's when the Washington field office said, well, we can't show you those things because we've got undercover people in there. We've got assets in there. So if you tell us the exact time of footage, you'd say, okay, well, we need footage from this camera at this exact time. We can give that to you, to which, of course, the Boston field office said, well, but what good does that do us? We don't even know that they were in the Capitol. You're the one who's telling us that we need to look at them for being in there. So we don't know whether they were in there or not. This is why Democrats have been so adamant about not allowing that footage to be released. This is why the media has been as helpful as possible in covering that footage up. This is why they're trying to portray the release of that information to Tucker Carlson as something that's dangerous, that shouldn't have, because they know what's in that. They know what's in that footage. And what they don't want Americans to see is government officials encouraging people to do things that they would later be arrested for. What they don't want the American people to see are people working on behalf of our government to create a scenario that otherwise would not have happened. And all of, whether it's the sudden admission by divisions within the Biden administration that the Wuhan lab might have been where the COVID came from, or the pitching a fit regarding the release of this footage. It's all about the same thing. It's about the American people learning information that they don't want the American people to know, and either getting ahead of it, like with the COVID lab leak, or trying to get ahead of it, or trying to block it, like the footage from the Capitol on January 6th. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Don Carricker, I want a great home loan.com for all of your home loan needs. One of the things that Alex Carricker talked about a couple of weeks ago when we were doing the Friday Road Show was that oftentimes people mistakenly believe that they have been all set up with a pre-approval, and they are not. They are told, whether it's online or their bank, oh yeah, oh no, don't worry, you're covered, you'll be good. And then they make an offer on a home, and then they find out, well, we didn't actually, run through the whole process. There's more than that. We got to get this information. In fact, when you go through iwantagreathomeloan.com, and there's an app and there's a lot of info, and you'll be like, gosh, why do they want all of this information? That's a lot more than my bank asked for. It's because they want to make sure that you are legit pre-approved. Legit. So when you do make that offer, you're not going to be embarrassed or lose out because you find out, well, we didn't actually run it. Because that's what will happen when you go back oftentimes to whatever institution you originally went and they didn't do it fully. Is they're going to then ask you for all that information. So just do it right, straight up the first time. iwantagreathomeloan.com, because you do. So here's a text, and I want to address this because it is a legitimate concern, if you will. But upon thinking about it, I don't think that people really necessarily need to be worried about it. It's regarding McCarthy releasing I think it's 44,000 or even more hours of footage. And it was turned over to Tucker Carlson and his producers and everyone in way of releasing it. And some people are complaining, well, that's not releasing it to the public. So I want to address that coming up in just a couple of moments. We do have a traffic update. I'm Nick Reed. The Doobie Brothers are going to be at Great Southern Bank Arena Thursday, June 15th. You can register to win a pair of tickets by texting Brothers to the American Transmissions Talk and Text line 447-KSGF. Do 417 447-KSGF. If you did it earlier and you did not get a response telling you you're registered, go ahead and do it again. There was an issue with it, but I just tested it on my phone, and it is working now. So if you tried it and did not get a response that says, thank you, you're registered, go ahead and text that again. So that's for the Doobie Brothers. That'll be coming up on June 15th. First Alert forecast sponsored by Navant. Employee benefits that work. Partly sunny, windy today with a high of 73. Tonight, mostly cloudy, 41. Mostly cloudy with a slight chance of rain, high of 54 tomorrow. Wednesday, rainy and windy with a high of 50. When McCarthy, I believe it was before he was voted speaker, he had made it known that as speaker, he would release the 40-plus thousand hours of January 6th Capitol footage for the public to see. This is something Nancy Pelosi had been attempting to keep covered up. In the last several weeks, it was turned over to Tucker Carlson's team. Now, this is for McCarthy, one of those damned if you do and damned if you don't, because on one hand, the traditional media is pitching a fit because he turned it over to Tucker Carlson, who is conservative. And so Tucker Carlson, being a conspiracy theorist and all these other things, turning it over to him delegitimizes it. On the other hand, there are a lot of people who want to see all of it, who feel as if McCarthy did not actually release it by giving it to Tucker Carlson. Now, I'm one of these individuals that I'm playing devil's advocate because I am skeptical generally, and this is an argument that I've heard, and I thought, well, I'm going to think about this. Now, my approach is, okay, if I were McCarthy and I wanted this released to the public, 44-plus thousand hours of video, how am I going to do it? Now, my ultimate conclusion is I don't know how I would do it other than release it to somebody like, for example, Tucker Carlson. And here's why. And this is a very simplistic approach. So my assessment may not be the best, but this is it. What am I going to do? What am I going to upload it on YouTube? 44,000 hours? 44 plus? Or 48,000, however many? How many hours are in a year? Can you check that out? Can you Google that or something? How many hours are in a year? Because I off the top of my head, I genuinely don't know 48,000 or 44,000 hours, how much time that is. Was it popping up?
It says 8,760 hours.
So how many times does it, so let's say 9 and 40, so you're talking about 5 years, 5 or 6 years worth of footage. So in other words, if you are going to make the decision, I want to watch all of that, you are going to have to sit nonstop without sleeping for over 5 hours. It's been a long time since I've tried to upload any video, but I do know there are limitations to things that you can upload, and it will oftentimes time out, or you'll be told, oh, hey, that file's too big. 5+ years worth of footage. So just logistically, where am I going to put it so that people have full access to it? So then I think to myself, well, a government website somewhere. Being in the industry I am in, I also understand that too much information is oftentimes worse than, or it's the same as no information at all. If you put 5+ years worth of footage up and you're like, okay, everyone, here you go, have at it, you might as well not put any up. Does somebody really have the time to sit? And if that person did exist, I mean, they have to sleep some. So you're probably talking realistically, if they devoted their entire life to it, 10 years. Do they even know what they were looking for? The reason that I believe this footage is instrumental to informing the public is because it will expose, this is my belief, that it will expose our government facilitating that event. They wanted it to happen. They helped create it, just like they did with the Gretchen Whitmer case, in which the vast majority of people involved in that entire scenario were working either for the government or on behalf of the government. And it would not have occurred if it weren't for them. I'm not going to know who to look for. If I have 10 plus years of time to sit and do nothing but watch footage, I'm not going to know who to look for. So, again, I think, okay, well, who then to do that? Are we supposed to expect McCarthy's office to be able to do that, to go through that? Again, we're talking 10 plus years of footage. Now, I'm just telling you my approach on this, and it's not, some people may see it as a defense of McCarthy. I'm just realistically looking at this and thinking to myself, okay, if our goal as the public is to get as much meaningful information out of 5+ years of footage regarding January 6th in the Capitol, I don't believe there is any way that just posting all of it is going to in any way, shape, or form do that. I just don't believe that. I could be wrong. Now, that doesn't mean that it should not be. If it's, I can't think of, if you even can find some platform that you can have 5+ years of footage put that will hold it, whether it's government or whatever it may be. I don't see any reason not to put it up there, but I don't believe that that's going to do any good. I also don't believe it's going to do any good to send it to CBS, MSNBC, ABC, any of these outlets. So if I'm McCarthy's office and I want to find the most meaningful way, the way that is going to provide the most meaningful transparency and information to the American people, I would give it to a team of people who, number one, really want to get the truth out there. They're not looking to cover up for Nancy Pelosi. They're not looking to cover up for the Biden administration. They're not looking to cover up for, somebody who shot an unarmed veteran in the Capitol. But somebody who really wants to get the truth out there. Now, is Tucker Carlson the best to do that with the best team of people? I don't know the answer to that, but I don't think anyone who does come to that determination is wacko or anything. I would say if I had to make a list of 5 people or entities, he'd probably be in there. It's still I don't care how big his team of people are, that is still going to be something that is just such a huge task to take on. And I imagine if it is even possible for them to be given some direction that's going to help, hey, listen, you're probably going to want to look here, you're going to probably want to look there, but I don't know what individual or what office would even give Tucker Carlson, one, that wouldn't have that knowledge, but also be on the side of transparency. I suspect any entity or any office or any person that does know where the relevant footage is probably is not on the side of allowing the American people to see that, if you know what I mean. So they certainly aren't going to help. So my ultimate takeaway on this is, number one, I completely get the initial reaction that, well, why, he released it to Tucker Carlson, and that's not making it available to the public. But I also thinking about, okay, if that were me, this were my office, my goal is to make sure that people are able to get a better idea of what happened that day, get the truth of what happened that day, with this footage being the evidence to do that. I don't know that I could think of a better way than McCarthy did it. And there may be. But straight through over 5+ years of footage, those are my thoughts on it. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Oh, I thought I'd share with you what Diana had to say about Emily Johnson House Theory Realty. She is just the best. We worked with her to sell our home and buy a new home, and Emily helped make it such an easy process in both cases. She guided us in the right direction, advocated for us repeatedly, also took pressure off of us by offering to contact people for us and make arrangements as needed for repairs, estimates, etc. If we were unavailable, Emily always took the time to make things work. It was so much fun working with her over the past few months, and we would recommend her to anyone looking for a new agent. Now, how many times have you heard people explain the process of selling and at the same time having to buy a new home is fun? Usually it's stressful. You hear terms like anxiety. If you are a couple, it can create tension and stress. And so to have people describe it as actually a fun experience, that says a lot about Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. Realtor, broker, and owner of House Theory Realty. Tomorrow, I am going to talk, I'm giving you a heads up notice on this, about something that I did touch on to just a degree while we were doing the show from Mexico. And that is a full-on assault, if you will, public relation assault on Dr. Miriam Mohammed Mahani of the school board by the elites. They are in panic mode. They see this as a make or break moment in terms of, are they still going to, the elites, be able to continue to turn the Springfield public school systems, or at least have a chance to turn them into indoctrination centers for the left, or are the parents and the citizens once again going to reject that and say, no, these should be education centers that are teaching about science and technology and math, not turning students into political activists. And there was an event, and again, there's been a bit of coverage, and they've been coordinating with the news leader on this. These stories don't happen by accident. In which there was an indoctrination event that took place in which they removed students from the Springfield Public School District, took them over to MSU for these indoctrination camps, if you want to call them that. What they did not expect was Dr. M to find out about it and to decide as a school board member, oh, this is something that, that we're removing students from the school out of the building to take them elsewhere. And so as a school board member, as a representative of the community who was elected for the purposes of making sure that the district is best educating children, she made the decision to attend. And because of a Q&A period in which it essentially what happened was they realized she was there, and the full court press narrative began. The calls to the news leader, all right, we got to write articles on this. We have to get out ahead of this. Because what they knew or feared was going to happen is that once again she was going to blow the whistle on what was being done to these children. Tomorrow I'm going to play audio from the school board meeting from last week in which this was addressed and in which she was removed as vice president of the board. She wasn't removed from the board. She's an elected official, and there was some confusion, understandably, over that. But they decided that she should no longer be vice president. But I will tell you this. What's interesting is the disruption. And you've got Cliff Smart of MSU. We're finding out who the not very good people are in this community. And we'll go into this some tomorrow. But they are all coordinating because she called out one of the people that were there to indoctrinate these young people. She caught him lying. And what's interesting in the discussion that I'll play the audio for you tomorrow of the school board is one of the other school board members who is running for re-election does not dispute the fact that these students were lied to. In fact, nobody appears to be disputing the fact that these kids were lied to. But they just felt that the fact that Dr. M called out the person for lying was disrupting a safe space for the kids. That the way she did it was wrong. Now, I think it is absurd, and it is a horrific signal as to the motivations of these people, that they seem perfectly fine with the fact that these kids were being lied to. Perfectly fine with that. Didn't bother them at all. Their problem was with the fact that the person lying to them was being called out for it. I don't know that there has been such a stark display publicly of the battle between the two forces right now within the school district and the school board, those who see the schools as a place in which our children should be learning in a meaningful way, educationally speaking, that is going to allow them to get out there in the world and be prepared to be productive, self-sustaining members of society, versus those who want to indoctrinate them to become political soldiers. And on full display, not even disputing the fact that they were lying to these kids, tells us a lot. It tells us a lot. So we'll have some of that audio tomorrow. Now, I'm mentioning this to you today for a couple of reasons. One, just so you know that we will have that tomorrow. But also, there is a piece in the Federalist. Yes, critical race theory teaches kids to hate each other. And that is what was going on at this event. Ultimately. And it is this, and I want to share this piece with you coming up, and it is this continued effort by the left to separate kids and to pit them against one another so that they hate each other. Now, some of them, that may not be their intent. Some may think that what they're doing is actually good or it's enlightened or whatever their reason for it. But the outcome is becoming more and more clear daily. Quick break, more ahead. I'm going to have to hold this piece from the Federalist over into the next hour, but it's very, very important to understand. We can talk about the motivations of those who continue to push this critical race theory, but one, the fact that they're constantly lying about it, claiming they're not doing that, and then when they become exposed, of course, justifying it, that right there is red flag. Anytime anyone is pulling kids aside and feeding them information and saying don't tell others, or when they get caught, they deny that's what they're actually doing, that's always a red flag. It's always a red flag. People who are honest and above board and who really genuinely recognize that what they're doing is good, they share it with the world. They want to spread it. They don't lie about it. But aside from the motivation, can anyone claim that race relations are becoming better as they push this stuff? There was a doctor that was just riding his bike a few weeks ago, hit by a car. Doctor was white. The guy who hit him was black, got out and murdered him while ranting about white privilege. There was footage of it was an elementary school in Springfield, Ohio. I think there was footage that accompanied it, in which after being indoctrinated in this critical race theory stuff, all in the name of unity and healing, you had black elementary school students that at the playground were forcing white students on their knees to pledge support for Black Lives Matter. These things are occurring with greater frequency. Are we really going to argue that things are so much better? Once upon a time, I know when many of us grew up, I happen to be post-segregation. Kid that grew up playing on the playground in the 80s. We didn't give a lick of care about the color of kids. And now we're fostering this atmosphere in which we have segregation, in which we have, one race of kids making other race of kids kneel down and pledge support to their race. That's not progress. That is not positive. And these instances are occurring with greater frequency, and it's not in a vacuum. You cannot disconnect the two. You cannot disconnect this increasing willingness and almost virtuous position some people are taking that because of their skin color, they can treat other people of a different skin color poorly and demand that they pledge allegiance to their skin color. You can't just, well, we don't know why that's happening. It has nothing whatsoever to do with what we're teaching kids. It is the direct result of what these kids are being taught. And this is, again, much of this is the root of this upcoming school board battle in Springfield. We're going to get an update on the news. We'll continue on. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. We got happy hour coming up this Friday. That's right, Retro Metro. Now, we're partners with Retro Metro on a couple of things. One, our lunch bunch, where every Wednesday we take a winner, along with 5 of their friends or coworkers or family members, whomever, to have lunch with us at Retro Metro. And as great as the food was the food not tremendous on our great? I mean, it was just absolutely tremendous on the Great Escape. It was wonderful. That particular resort was known for their gourmet food. I did really genuinely miss my weekly lunch at Retro Metro, and so I recommend you go to ksgf.com and get yourself registered for that. But then Friday, we will be having our happy hour, and that's 4 to 6 Friday afternoon on your way home from work, and just come by, say hey, hang out, and have something to eat if you want or not, whatever you want to do, okay? It's just to get together with some friends. So that'll be at Retro Metro on Republic and Cox this Friday from 4 to 6. I want to share this piece with you from the Federalist. Yes, critical race theory teaches kids to hate each other. Like you, I'm big in results. You can sit around and yammer all day about, well, it's supposed to work this way, it's supposed to work that way, but how does it work? When you think about it, that's sort of flight, for example. And that's how the Wright brothers figure that out. Let's try this. That didn't work. Do they keep doing the same thing over and over again? When the device that was intended to fly instead crashed on the ground just yards after lifting off of the ground, and they say, all right, well, let's just keep doing that over and over again. No. They adjusted until they met their goal. This push of critical race theory, this push of white privilege, this push of what they say is simply acknowledging history, but that's not, of course, the case. Let's look at the results. Things are not getting better, they are getting worse. That's when you stop doing those things. But unfortunately, there are forces on the left that want to continue to do more of what is making things worse. Stephanie Lundquist Aurora wrote in the Federalist in mid-February 2023, administrators at an elementary school in Springfield, Ohio, called the police to intervene in a racially charged incident on the playground. According to the police report, a group of black students forced several white students to say Black Lives Matter against their will. Around the same time in Orlando, Florida, a teacher at Howard Middle School created and posted to his personal social media account a demeaning skit using students from his classroom. In it, white students bowed to their black classmates, feeding them snacks and fanning them. The teacher, now on administrative leave, captioned the video, Black History Month, the shortest month of the year. Critical race theory is permeating school or public education across the country and aggravating racial hostilities even among elementary school children. At the end of February, 6th grade teachers at Hunt Valley Elementary School in Fairfax County discussed heightened racial tensions with their students. There had been reports of racial slurs used on the playground. One teacher in particular told her students that the faculty instructs in detail about the living conditions of enslaved Africans to foster a sense of empathy among children, but it seems the hyper-focus on racial differences in both primary and secondary education widens the racial chasm. Across Fairfax County, elementary schools have replaced a standardized test for 4th graders regarding Virginia's colonial history with a critical race theory project. No longer are Fairfax County schools assessing students' knowledge of Virginia's settling and our nation's founding. Rather, standards of learning have been reduced to intimate knowledge of the living conditions of different races. The project focuses in particular on the life of the white gentry versus the enslaved Africans in the 1700s. Aside from the critical race theory lessons at all levels in Fairfax County Public Schools, student groups work with the district's several equity officers to present racially divisive material to their peers. On January 30th, 2023, students at West Springfield High School, this is in Virginia, not here, this is West Springfield High School, were forced to watch a disturbingly racist video on microaggression in the name of equity education. In the video, white people were illustrated as cartoon mosquitoes, taking bites out of non-white people with their microaggressions. In response, at the end of the video, the non-white people eventually exterminated them with flamethrowers. Now, I'm not big into making, Nazi this, Nazi that, but this is one of the things that was done to the Jews. They're vermin. They dehumanize them through caricatures. And to put elementary schools or elementary school students in front of a video that shows the white ones as mosquitoes and then the non-white students, the non-white characters in the video, destroying them with flamethrowers? On February 22nd, 2023, at the same high school, there was an assembly in honor of Black History Month. During the assembly, the Black Students Association put on several skits, none of which were based on history. Rather, during the skits, the one white student member in the club repeatedly acted racist towards the black students, saying things such as, "All black people look alike." These skits portrayed black students as victims of racism and the police, and the white students as the perpetrator. Across Fairfax County, at Langley High School, students watched a Columbia Day PowerPoint presentation in October of 2022 that mentioned the Explorer only 3 times. Instead, activists seized the opportunity to make the day about equity and inclusion. One of the slides read, quote, "Take a moment to reflect independently on the ways in which Native Americans are subject to racial discrimination and or insensitivity and why that is commonplace in America's society. This question might be a good one for the family dinner table, but it doesn't belong in the classroom. These lessons are not only in clear violation of Governor Youngkin's Executive Order 1 regarding teaching divisive concepts, but they are counterproductive for relationships among children. Consider Jane Elliott's 1968 blue-eye, brown-eye experiment. She told her third grade classroom that people with brown eyes were superior to those with blue eyes. Elliott then had the brown-eyed children place construction paper armbands on their blue-eyed classmates. The blue-eyed children weren't allowed to drink directly from the water fountain, have second helpings at lunch, or play on the jungle gym or swings at recess. She also instructed the blue-eyed children to not do their homework because they probably wouldn't remember to bring it back to school even if they completed it. The brown-eyed children quickly internalized the message from their teacher and started to act aggressively towards their blue-eyed classmates. During her highly unethical experiment, Elliott switched the roles of the students, and the results were the same. When the people with authority, such as school teachers and administrators, tell children that one group is the oppressor and the other is oppressed, children tend to listen. These critical race theory lessons are fostering anger and aggression instead of empathy among children. Teachers and administrators need to stick to the 3 R's of education. Social and racial politics must be under the jurisdiction of families, not public education. Now, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about this some tomorrow, and this is the sort of thing, this is a sort of division that MSU was hosting with the pulling out of mostly students of color out of the Springfield Public School District and hosting with the NAACP at this event that they claimed was about showing young people the benefits of attending college, but instead indoctrinating them to hate one another. I thought it was very interesting and at the same time sad. The reference to Jane Elliott's 1968 blue-eye, brown-eye experiment, and the fact that she instructed the blue-eyed children, whom she had told everyone they were inferior, not to bother doing their homework because they probably, even if they did do it, wouldn't remember to bring it in anyhow. And the fact that the left is increasingly lowering standards because they say children of color, they can't keep up. children of color can't be expected to make the same grade, so let's just do away with scholarships. Let's just do away with grades. And how absolutely that is where the racism lies. Jason Rima with the latest news update. First alert forecast, sunny, windy, 73 today, 41 tonight, mostly cloudy with a chance of rain. Tomorrow, 54 for a high. Wednesday, rainy and windy with a high of 50. Sarah Myers.
Oh, gosh.
You're really swinging it over there.
I know. Clearly a professional over here.
Boom, 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 boom.
Just making sure everybody's awake
Yeah.
out there. Well, after the show today, I am making a call to Bruce over at Beatles Property Maintenance because I am ready to do some more home repairs to my house. Now, I'm calling Bruce to see if they can come out and take a look at my deck because it is springtime, which means that we are going to be outside quite a bit. I also want to get some lighting in my kitchen and an exhaust fan in my bathroom. And the reason why I mention all of those things is I love to show all of the variety of repairs that Beatles Property Maintenance can do for your home. So if you're out there and you're like, oh gosh, I have kind of a unique repair, or I'm not exactly sure who to call, like, I don't know, that can be very frustrating. That's why I love to tell you about Beatles Property Maintenance, because they really do a vast option when it comes to home repairs. So if you do find yourself needing a great company, highly recommend Beatles Property Maintenance. Beatles is spelled Beadles, and you can find all of their contact information housed at ksgf.com under the Sarah's Endorsements tab.
Traffic update, I'm Nick Reed. I get a few things in order here. I'm going to go ahead and throw it to you again, Sarah.
Hey, thank you.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
it. Now, you said that there's going to be some rain later this
Yes,
week.
I did.
I was listening to you. How about that? I can't remember what day, so guess I wasn't listening that great. But needless to say, there's going to be some rain this week. And if you find yourself, when it is raining, with some leaks, some drips, some yellowing on your ceiling, highly recommend my friends over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. They can come out, give you a free estimate. They get on your roof, take tons of photos and videos to show you exactly what is going on. And they'll be upfront and honest with you. Maybe you don't need a whole new roof. Maybe you need just a roof repair. Either way, the Pyramid Roofing Company, they make the process incredibly simple. Whenever I used Pyramid to get the roof on my home and also on my garage and my cellar, they had it done within just a matter of days, and I couldn't be happier with the results. And every time it rains, I feel really safe knowing that the Pyramid Roofing Company, they have got my back, and they just did an awesome job. So if you do find yourself looking for a roofing company, highly recommend the Pyramid Roofing Company. You can find their contact information at ksgf.com under the Sarah's Endorsements tab.
You're just really moving up in the world. When it rains, it no longer comes in through your... I mean,
you know
boy,
what? I
you're
know.
Class act.
I know. Well, I was scared whenever I first moved into my house. It was a little sketchy, but we're good now.
All right, well, good.
I know.
But Bernie Sanders has managed to benefit erroneously from the characteristic that, as wrong as he may be in his beliefs, he's at least genuine in them. I'm not sure how he has managed to capture that characteristic. I've heard that even from people on the right. They're like, well, you got to say this about him. He really believes it. I'm not sure if it's because he plays the bumbling old guy. If people figure if he doesn't bother combing his hair, then he clearly doesn't care what people think, so he's going to always say what he actually believes. I'm not sure what it is, but the one thing I know is he's full of crap. This was on display the week before last. When he was on CBS, and he's doing this book tour, and the book's against capitalism. Yet because of capitalism, he's not only doing the book tour, but charging. There's a charge for people to come, listen to him talk about his book, and you pay more if you want better seats. Classism doesn't seem like equality to me, but of course, this is how he's operating. And when he was asked about it, there's nothing I can do about it. Well, it's the publisher that does that. Now, I happen to believe what he felt was his explanation is actually worse than if he had kept the money, because his excuse was that these mega corporations were the ones making money off him, not him. I just don't have anything to do with me. And he just dismisses it, and he's allowed to. This is what Bernie Sanders is allowed to do. And he did it again recently with Bill Maher. And Bill Maher let him get away with it, which to some degree is fine, because I think it does make the point, and he's got a panel of people. It wasn't about a one-on-one interview with Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, he knows that he's full of crap, which is why he is dismissive. He portrays himself as conceding a point so that the conversation can move on. Like with the book tour, and he conceded the point that, yes, this was capitalism at play, and, he didn't like it, but there's nothing I can do about it. It's the same for me as anybody else. Anybody else would be in the same position. And so that's just the way that it is, and so let's just move on. Bill Maher was talking about equity versus equality. Democrats have conflated these two terms. They have over time replaced equality with equity, largely because we have gotten to a place where equality has been fully recognized, particularly when it comes to the races. So you have to create a new problem, and that is equity. And they have tried to replace the virtues of equality with equity. And Bill Maher, the subject of this particular conversation, I'm going to play audio in which he's asking Bernie Sanders. Bill Maher's noting that these two terms are being used interchangeably as if they are synonymous with one another when they're not. And he asked Bernie Sanders about this.
Are we confusing equality of opportunity with trying to guarantee equity in outcomes? Okay, that's interesting because I think this word equity has come into the language in the last few years, and before that we didn't hear it a lot. And I think a lot of people hear equity and they hear equality, that like it's the same word, and it's not the same word and the same concept. So how would you differentiate between equity and equality?
Well, equality, we talk about, I don't know what the answer to that is.
Now let's just stop right there. If you're a supporter of Bernie Sanders, does that not bother you? One of the biggest promoters of equity, and he's actually put on the spot. Bill Maher noting, when I say put on the spot, this should not be a gotcha question. I mean, the theme of Bernie Sanders is equity. Not equality, but equity. It's the theme of the Democrat Party, theme of the media, theme of politics. It's all equity, equity, equity. It's the theme of most public schools. Equity, equity, equity. If you notice, Democrats have a very difficult time simply defining the issues that they themselves bring to the forefront. Transgenderism is a great example. They can't even define woman anymore. What? Who am I to say what a woman? I'm not a biologist. If you're a Bernie Sanders supporter, one of the biggest champions and proponent of equity, and he's asked what it is in terms of the difference between equality. Well, gosh, I don't know. Never really thought of it before. What does that tell you? When he can't now. He can define it, but this is the big secret. He knows that it's not a good thing. He knows it means communism. It means the things that he believes in. And he recognizes that. That is not ultimately about improving the quality of life, so people don't like that. People who have lived under regimes in which equity was the great cause, whether it's Fidel Castro or Stalin or any of these individuals who task themselves with micromanaging society so that everyone had equity. He knows what that looks like in history. So he can't exactly say that. Instead, he plays dumb. Well, I've never really thought about that before. He did continue.
Are we confusing equality of opportunity with trying to guarantee equity in outcomes? Okay, that's interesting because I think this word equity has come into the language in the last few years, and before that we didn't hear it a lot. And I think a lot of people hear equity and they hear equality, that like it's the same word, and it's not the same word and the same concept. So how would you differentiate between equity and equality?
Well, equality, we talk about, I don't know what the answer to that is. Come to think of it, equality is equality of opportunity. All right? We live in a society, we want all people to have whatever color your skin is.
Equity, I think, is more guarantee of outcome, is it not?
I think so. I think that's
okay. So which side do you come down on?
Equality.
Equality.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Now, that's his answer at the moment. This is what the left oftentimes does, that they're forced to confront reality. They'll say whatever it is to get themselves out. They're in a corner. They're boxed out. They're boxed in the corner. And so, yeah, it's different. No, I'm for equity. That's what I'm for. Or for equality, rather. Yep, definitely that's what it's for. Let's just move on and talk about something else now. Bernie Sanders is not genuine. Bernie Sanders is not authentic in his beliefs. Bernie Sanders knows that he's a liar. And here he is, being asked simply to define one of his great virtue signaling themes, and that is equity, and he plays dumb. And when Bill Maher defines it for him, he's like, "Oh yeah, that's right. No, I'm not for equity. I'm for equality." That is not going to stop him from going out there and pitching equity. Got some Jill Biden audio. She was asked about a mental fitness test for candidates, specifically Joe Biden. Also, some Chris Rock audio. He's getting some news coverage in the way that David Chappelle has, and that is addressing some of the issues that comedians are no longer supposed to talk about. But I'm telling you, it is this cancel culture that has been weaponized by the left. I believe that it is going to be potentially the black comedian that finally puts an end to it. And we're seeing that with people like Dave Chappelle, Chris Rock as well. That audio coming up. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. First alert forecast, partly sunny, windy, a high today of 73, 41 tonight, mostly cloudy with a slight chance of rain tomorrow, 54, and Wednesday rainy, windy, high of 50. A few weeks ago announced we filled a new category that I believe is meaningful to many of you being homeowners, and that are garage doors. Talked a lot over the past year about garages themselves, but doors, and doors are more important than you'd think. They're not one size fits all. I'm not talking about actual dimensions, that's clear. One of the things that I've learned as I explored different companies regarding garage doors, and I would eventually meet with and come to become friends with the owner of Greene County Garage Doors, is that there is a massive difference, not just in quality, but when it comes to the safety of you and your family, and high winds, let alone tornadoes. With some garage doors, that's the first thing to go, and it can cause damage to the rest of your home as well. And certain garage doors are of higher quality. The garage door I have was built with the home, and like a lot of things with your home, they'll put in the cheaper windows, they'll put in the cheaper garage door, but as you put time, effort, and value into your home, the garage door is one area, not just from the aesthetics, but the quality of it, that can make a tremendous difference. And that's one of the things I'm learning, and I am getting my garage door replaced, and I'll make sure to keep you updated on that and encourage you. The owner, Jeremy, of Greene County Garage Doors, he's incredible. I know you're going to like the guy, and you're going to be very pleased. Any sort of garage questions you may have, even if it's a repair question, just reach out to them. You can find them under Nick's Endorsements at ksgf.com. Jill Biden was asked, this was an interview CNN, and Nikki Haley had commented on a competency test for people running for president. I think she said over the age of 70 or 75. By the way, number one, I don't agree with this. Here's the way I look at it. We all know that Biden's not competent. People voted for him anyway. I don't believe a competency test. One, I don't. Who's going to choose the person that does it? Does the campaign get to choose the person? After we saw, evidently, we're told 2 doctors say that Fetterman was fully fit to run for the U.S. Senate and serve 6 years, and then we saw the results of that. Do we really trust these people to have some sort of physical or mental evaluation and then provide us with honest results? I don't trust it anyway. But aside from that, even if you had somebody come out and say Biden did not pass this thing, let's not trick ourselves into believing that there would still not have been a significant number of people in this country that would have voted for him anyway. They know. So I don't support it. I don't think it would have any meaning. I wouldn't trust it anyway. I don't know that Nikki Haley necessarily does either. This could just be a very clever way to put his mental capacity, competency out there without putting it out there so much, without just saying, look, the guy clearly has some mental cognitive issues. The guy clearly has signs of dementia. Instead of doing that, just put out the issue of mental competency by saying that there should be some sort of test. But that aside, Jill Biden was asked about that on CNN.
Nikki Haley, one of the Republican candidates, is calling for mental competency tests for those politicians over the age of 75. What do you think about that?
Ridiculous.
Would your husband ever take one of those?
I mean, we would never even discuss something like that.
It's a very clever answer because I do believe it is true. They would never discuss something like that. We all know that if further pressed, why would you not discuss it? Her answer may not be quite as honest, but I could tell you the answer because they know what the outcome would be. Why test yourself for something if you already know the results? She knows. Everyone knows. I'm not sure if her answer was one designed with the sole purpose of just dismissing the notion, or if she was being clever in answering the question honestly, but in a manner that made it appear as if she didn't even believe that he had any sort of mental competency issues. But in fact, the way she answered it certainly does also point to the fact that potentially, because, and I think that this is the case, she knows what the result would be. And again, we all know, is a test really going to tell us something we don't know when we watch him on a day-to-day basis? There are some things one does not need to be a medical expert to recognize. If I see somebody in a wheelchair, although I am not a doctor, I recognize that person in some capacity has either difficulty or the inability to walk. That's just clear and obvious. One does not need to be a doctor to recognize that. One, I suggest, does not need to be a doctor to recognize that Joe Biden, when you have seen him perform over the years in the past versus the way he performs today, that he is not the same person mentally that he once upon a time was. Chris Rock. Chris Rock is getting a lot of attention because of his new Netflix special. He hit on a variety of major topics during the debut of the special, Selective Outrage. What a perfect title. I have not watched the special on Netflix. I'm sure that the portions of this that are getting attention are where he's hitting out more at what most would consider to be sort of the left-wing perspective. He may hit out at Republicans and Trump, and I don't know. Rock began the show by taking shots at people who get, quote, triggered and believe that words hurt. Telling the audience, anybody that says that words hurt have never been punched in the face. Words hurt when you write them on a brick. By the way, as I read this story, it's very, very difficult for me. I don't hear Chris Rock's voice. I hear Michael Scott doing Chris Rock's voice from the episode Diversity Training. I think it was the second or third episode in the first season in which Michael Scott he saw a Chris Rock act that had a lot of racial language in it. And so, like a lot of people do, they like to repeat comedic acts. And so at work, he's doing it. And so that triggered a diversity training course that he had to participate in. That's all I can hear is Michael Scott doing Chris Rock. He also talked about Meghan Merkel, and evidently one of the not following the royal family to the degree that others do, but one of the claims of racism that she lobbed against the royal family is that they were concerned about how brown the baby would be, and this is his comments on that during his Netflix special.
That she went through was not racism. It was just some in-law. So she's complaining. I'm like, what the fuck is she talking about? No, they're so racist. They wanted to know how brown the baby was going to be. They're so racist. They wanted to know how brown the baby's going to be. I'm like, that's not racist. Because even black people want to know how brown the baby going to be.
He also, at one point, he says, he's talking about selective outrage. The one thing, of course, that, again, is the title of the stand-up performance, selective outrage. So the thing I have a problem with is the selective outrage, adding that people who express selective outrage are full of blank, mother blankers typing out woke blank tweets on a phone made by child slaves, which is true oftentimes, depending on your phone. Not only is everybody full of blank, every business is full of blank. I was in the mall the other day. I went by the store, Lululemon. I think that's how it's pronounced. I walk by, and in the window of every Lululemon, there is a sign that says, "We don't support racism, sexism, discrimination, or hate," he said. And I'm like, who gives a blank? You're just selling yoga pants. I don't need your yoga pants politics. Now, in a non-comedic setting, Idris Elba, speaking of The Office, he had a reoccurring role for a few episodes there, is taking aim at those slamming him for saying he doesn't want to be known as a black actor, calling the backlash against him saying that stupid, and insisting he's not denying his blackness. The British actor, who has starred in Marvel's Thor films, Star Trek Beyond, Pacific Rim, other blockbusters, told Esquire magazine in February he hesitates to call himself a black actor, saying, "I stopped describing myself as a black actor when I realized it put me in a box." Well, that's where you're supposed to be. He did not deny that racism can be very real, but he also says he feels that people can become obsessed with racism to their own detriment. Springfield Public Schools. He said, as humans, we're obsessed with race, and that obsession can really hinder people's aspirations, hinder people's growth. Racism should be a topic of discussion. Sure, racism is real, but from my perspective, it is only as powerful as you allow it to be. We've got to grow. We've got to. Our skin is no more than that. It's just skin. He added that he didn't become an actor because he wanted to see more black people in the profession. He said, "I did it because I thought that's a great profession and I could do a good job at it." Saying, "I don't want to be the first black. I'm the first Idris." He said he noted that if black kids are inspired by his career, that's a good thing. He said, I might be the first to look like me to do a certain thing, and that's good to leave as part of my legacy so that other people, black kids, but also white kids growing up in the circumstances I grew up in, are able to see that there's a kid who came from Canning Town who ended up doing what I do. It can be done. I believe it is going to take, to stop all of this crap, this damaging, divisive crap that we are seeing on all levels, that we had revealed to us thanks to Dr. M on the school board, that they are trying to divide and indoctrinate people within the Springfield public school system into. It is going to be black people who stop it from happening. Black people who are high profile. It is going to be the Dave Chappelles. It is going to be the Chris Rocks. It is going to be the Idris Elbas. There are many others, but I'm utilizing them as examples. And if you think about it, when there are successful changes in movements, when you have a movement that is, let's talk in the context of race, that is positioning one race as ultimately, in terms of treatment, ultimately superior to the other, it is the people within the upper hand or the superior race speaking out that changes it. And that says, no, this is wrong. It's what ultimately, I believe, it's where a big change began to happen in terms of the roles being reversed and the hatred against black people and the white people calling the shots and telling black people what they could and couldn't say and where they could and could not go. While there were obviously very instrumental people, Martin Luther King Jr. and so many others, that they had the movement going, it was when you had white people that started saying, yeah, our side is wrong on this. Because that obviously has to happen, right? You have to have people who are on the wrong side of it that come out and say, yeah, we were wrong. We are wrong. We shouldn't be doing this. That's what, that's the change that we want. That's when things start to get better. When the side that is wrong, the side that is divisive, the side that is racist starts to recognize, oh yeah, we are. And telling other people, yes, we are wrong. We're going to march with you because we're wrong. And that's why I believe that this current movement, the white privilege, the demonizing white kids in school as being the privileged ones and the perpetrators, and trying to indoctrinate people of color into believing that they are the victims and they should rise up and so forth. It's going to take the Chris Rocks. It's going to take these others that say that we got to cut this stuff out. It's just as wrong as it was in the 50s. Just because the shoe is on the other foot doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it superior. Because guess what? The people in the 50s who wanted segregation, the people in the 50s who told people of color, well, you can sing this song but not this song, or you can use this term but not that term, or you can associate with these people but not those people, they were wrong then, and the people who do it now with the shoe on the other foot are just as wrong as they were. And the high-profile people within the black community that are willing to stand up and say this is wrong, I believe that's the sign that we're looking for, that we're going to start heading back in the right direction and move away from the divisions and the pitting people against one another because of their skin color. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. And I've really mismanaged the timing here. So I'm going to just take 30-second break. And then I've got the CPAC straw poll, conservative political action conference taking place. And there was a straw poll done, DeSantis, Trump, a bunch of others, where all that fell. 30 seconds. Former President Donald Trump easily won the Conservative Political Action Conference, a.k.a. CPAC straw poll for the 2024 Republican Party presidential nominee Saturday, receiving 62% support in the poll, completed by more than 2,000 CPAC attendees, bringing him 40 points higher than the second-place candidates. They were announced on Saturday before he took the stage to address the crowd. DeSantis came in second place, receiving 20% support in the straw poll. Although he has not officially launched a presidential bid, many political pundits expect him to announce a candidacy. Michigan businessman Perry Johnson, who tried to run for governor for his state, came in third with 5% support. Nikki Haley and Vivek Ramaswamy, the only two declared candidates featured in the poll, received 3% and 1% support. Rand Paul, Ted Cruz, and former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo also received 1% support. Yeah, I was commenting about the segment of populations that are necessary, or they've at least in the past demonstrated it was necessary for them to be part of a movement in order to get change done. And they're obviously the iconic black people that moved us away from segregation, the Martin Luther King Jr.'s, for example. But when you obviously have to get a majority of people on board, and so when white people began standing up saying, yep, our race has been wrong on this thing, we're joining forces, that the opposite is going to need to happen for us to get away from the damage of wokeness. And I mentioned Chris Rock and recent interviews by Idris, whatever his last name is, I forget, and Dave Chappelle, and somebody mentioned Clarence Thomas. There are a tremendous number of examples of black Americans that are extremely successful and examples of doing things the right way. The problem is with people like the Clarence Thomas and others is it gets politicized and they get dismissed. You get somehow a real power but with a Chris Rock and a Dave Chappelle because they aren't traditionally political, and so they tend to seem to win people over in the public sphere a bit more. Glenn Beck's next. I'm Nick Reed.